Hey guys, Mike from Wrestling Then and Now. Thanks so much for checking out the YouTube channel and for all your support. If you haven't already, please click subscribe. I have so much content coming up. You don't want to miss anything. If you enjoy this video, please give it a like. It really does help my channel grow. Thanks again.
Did your dad actually break you in, Jamie?
Yeah. Well, I've told the story a few times in life. It was one of those things where I didn't really have a choice to become a wrestler because my dad had a wrestling school and he wasn't going to take the bumps. So it was everybody body slam Jamie, everybody drop kick Jamie, everybody arm drag Jamie. So before I knew it, every single wrestling school, I'm taking 70 arm drags, 70 body slam, 70 drop, whatever, to teach these other, to let them learn to wrestle. And then all of a sudden, I'll be damned, I know how to wrestle. So, yeah, because Bill wasn't going to get in the ring and take no bumps. He was already 50 then. He's like, I'm not doing this. But it was Bill Dundee's wrestling school, so he was there. But everybody do it to Jamie. And so before I knew it, I was a wrestler. And then a guy named Dale Mann, I don't know if you know who Dale Mann was. He ran out of Kentucky. Dale TNT Man was his name. He took a lot of young guys like my friend Chris Michaels, the Boogie Woogie Boy, Gary Valiant, just a bunch of my first partner, Ronnie Travis, just a bunch of, and he would take young guys and just hit the road, man. And it was one of those hit and miss. If we drew, he'd pay you, and if not, he'd feed you. And we would just drive. We drove Oklahoma, Missouri, Montana, Nevada, the dude we would take off driving, get a hit of town, we'd rent a building, we'd put posters all over the town. The next day we'd run to town and we'd do it again. We were just a band. He had a ring truck behind him, and the baby faces all in the van, and the heels in the ring truck, and we just rode around, and I loved it, man. It was great, bro. It really was. But he knew how to wrestle, and he taught us all how to wrestle and how to work a crowd, and it was really cool, man. And Dale, man, I have to give a lot of credit to.
Who came out of your dad's school that I would know?
I know who Todd Morton is. He's Ricky Morton's nephew. His name's Todd Morton. He beat Jordan. My dad had. They were all around in the 80s, like the late 80s, early 90s, and then a lot of them just went on about their lives and shit. They just did it because I really can't say to anybody that, but in our territory, everybody wanted to work Memphis. So being on Memphis TV, you made it. You know what I mean? If you got to go to the Memphis and work the loop, then to all these guys, they made it anyway. Because I didn't even know nothing about no other wrestling organization in my life when I was growing up. I didn't even know there was a WWF for nothing until my dad lost to Dundee-Lawler when I was 13, and we went to Louisiana. And I was like, damn, they got wrestling down here too, because there was no cable TV, there was no internet there, and I knew there was wrestling in Australia because that's where my dad and my family came from, but I didn't know America had. My dad said when he got here there was 42 major organizations. It was AWA, NWA. It was Florida for Dusty Rhodes. You had North Carolina with Ric Flair. You had Hulk Hogan in the WWF. I didn't even know about none of those. I just thought there was Memphis wrestling, man. I just thought that was it.
You talk about you're 13 years old, your dad versus Jerry Lawler. People that think it was just, Memphis wrestling. Please explain to people what your dad versus Jerry Lawler did business-wise in Memphis.
But I don't know if you can explain it. It's kind of like telling somebody you want to teach them psychology in the ring. You can't teach it. You just have to get in the ring and do it, and it comes to you. My dad and Jerry Lawler broke every record in sports history as far as they sold the Mid-South Coliseum out 16 weeks in a row. That's 11,687 people came 16 weeks in a row, which is 4 months every Monday night to see Lawler versus Dundee when they shaved my mama's head. And I was 8 years old when they did all that. 1979, they shaved my mama's head. And, I talked to Jerry Jarrett for a bunch about it after when I grew up and became a man, I guess, or whatever. And he said, Jamie, do you know how hard it was to convince your mother to shave her in the middle of the ring? I said, yeah, because I know my mama. She hates the wrestling business, first of all. And but in 1979, when they shaved her head, a house cost $8,000. They gave her 10. So they convinced her that, look, you can buy your first home in America paid for and have $2,000 in the bank and your hair will grow back. But he said it still wasn't that easy. He said it took weeks and months. And, that's the angle was 16 weeks long, but they really didn't know how long the angle was. The reason it ran 16 weeks is because they had to convince Beverly to shave her head. And so the 16th week. Because see, they in the angle they had Bill Dundee beat Lawler for everything. He won the Southern Belt. Then he won Lawler's house. Then he won Lawler's car. But really Lawler was in Japan, but the world didn't know that. So my dad went to Memphis and stayed in Lawler's house and drove around in Lawler's car. So people was like, Dundee really won Lawler's house, man. And then Lance Russell finds the king drunk in a ditch somewhere, and he's like, Dundee tagging all. And so then that's 4 weeks of all that angle. Then for the next 4 weeks, Lawler comes back like the superhero and he wins it. He wins the house back, the car back, the ring back. He wins the check back, the Southern title back. And now Dundee's got nothing Lawler wants. And Dundee's like, I'll bet my hair. So they beat Dundee, and it sells out. If Dundee shaves his black hair, and now Lawler really won't give him a shot because he's got nothing Lawler wants, because Lawler's got it all in his hair. And then he says, I bet my wife's hair. And the people's like, no way.
Wow. Yeah.
And Lawler's like, you bet your wife's hair. So then what they did was for 2 weeks, they built that up. They never gave them the match. They built it up for 2 or 3 more weeks on TV. And, and they never let it happen. And my mama, she comes out on TV and smacks Jerry Lawler. And my dad's pulling her back. And I mean, they're building it. And it packed that building, brother. And then my mom and daddy come home, and my dad was already bald. So my mom come home. They looked like a set of boobs there for breakfast. I was like, what? I was looking at them both, and my mama cried. My mama cried for weeks after that. And she would put wigs on, and then she would cry. But I mean, I guess she was. Hey, when you're a woman in 1979 from another country, and they convince you to shave your head, it's probably pretty hard,
Yeah, that might leave a scar on the inside, right?
Yeah. But also, they're in America, the opportunity, the land of opportunity, the land of greatness, and they own their first house. I mean, that's big stuff right there, man. That's the great American dream, is to own your own home, and then they got to do it off one haircut. So in '84. They teased it again. They had Lawler versus Dundee, and they talked about the hair, and they brought my mama, and they brought Paula Lawler, which was Jerry's wife at the time, and they built it up again, but they never went to that level. I guess they weren't going to convince my mama to shave it twice.
Who was the booker back then?
I would say Jerry Jarrett. Jerry Jarrett was the greatest mind in wrestling. You know what I'm saying? That guy, just like when me and Wolfie started with him, Jeff Jarrett saw me and Wolfie at a little outlaw town here in Kentucky, and where I live in, right down the road, actually, Beaver Dam, Kentucky. And Jeff happened to come there, and he said, man, have you showed this gimmick to my dad? And I'm like, no. And he said, go show this to my dad, man. So I called Jerry Jarrett. Jerry always had a great mind for wrestling. Jerry, when you're young, you're ambitious. You want to hurry up and do it. Like when he gave us the job and stuff, I told Wolfie, I said, we get him to smile. He's going to hire us. And so when we put our outfits on, he's just looking at it because, he's seen everything, man. You know what I mean? And he's and we put these little fake gold teeth that he had in, and we put a gold tooth in, and he's still just looking at it. And I put that hubcap around my neck, and he goes, what the hell's that? I go, that's the finish, man. And he started to smile. And I was like, Wolfie, yeah, we got a job. He's like, man, I like it. He said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to run 4 videos. We're going to run 4 weeks of rap videos before y'all ever hit. Well, I was like, no, we want to wrestle right now. And he's like, listen, son, we were wrestling 4 videos. By the time y'all hit TV, the people's going to be all over it. And sure enough, they were. But that guy was just a mastermind in wrestling, man. That guy could he could literally take chicken shit and turn it into chicken salad, because that dude was that good, man. But it goes back to not giving the people what they think is coming. He had that mind that, always thinking 16 weeks ahead instead of, right now, which most people are bookers or shot callers or whatever you want to call them. They only think of the week or the next, they book that thing. And what they do is they start on the 16th week and they book it backwards. They say, we're going to go to the hair, from the hair to the cage, from the cage to the deck, Texas death, and they book it backwards. And then, they start the angle with a little simple smack of somebody misses and moves or something, and just to plant the seed. And then, but what a mind that Jerry Jarrett had, man. He invented everything that's great in wrestling today, more or less. I mean, he really did. Kamala, and made that guy really look like he was from Uganda, he was a truck driver from Mississippi and filmed that video in our backyard, man. But yeah, he believed he was coming from Uganda, man. I thought he was a big African dude that would eat you.
What's the number one lesson you think you learned from Jerry Jarrett?
Man, that's a hell of a question, Ace. I know one thing he said to me one time. He's spitting in that cup. He chewed tobacco a lot, and I've known him since I was, came to America when I was 4 years old, and he's spitting in that cup. He said, "Jamie, son," he said, "you should have been a farmer, not a wrestler." I said, "Is that right, Jerry?" He goes, "Yes, sir." Because he said, you don't plow deep, but you lay a whole lot of seed. Because I got about 9 children in fucking 8 states, and he's like, "You should have been a farmer, son." So he told me that little joke, and then I started running shows in 2010 when I moved to Evansville. I run these legend shows, and I called everybody, all my buddies, all the people I grew up with, and I was running the shows, and I had never been on the promoter end, but being a promoter is friggin' nerve wracking and just crazy as hell, because you don't know who's showing up, and if they come, how they're gonna show up, and if they're gonna hold you up for money, and just all kind of things. And I run about 4 shows, every 3 months. And Jerry Jarrett came up here and he filmed me doing it stuff. He was going to try to get us a show, me and Dutch Mantell and Brian Christopher, but that's another story. But I told him, I said, "I do not know. I cannot imagine having a 7-day-a-week company with buildings sold out everywhere, and Buddy Landell not showing up in the main event, or Dundee won't do it, and Austin Knight." He said, "Jamie," he said, "one thing I learned is they don't call them the boys for nothing." He said, "Because they act like boys, especially when you put them in the spot. When you build them up and make them, they believe that they are bigger than the show, and nobody is bigger than the show ever. The show will go on without you, no matter what that show is. Whether you're flipping burgers at McDonald's, if you quit, somebody else is going to flip that burger. If you sell cars and you get pissed off and say they don't, and you quit, they're going to get somebody else to sell that is the show. The show is bigger than the people forever." And that has been taught lesson after lesson, over and over. All these big egotistical wrestlers that think they are the show goes on without you, man.